once again, go to October daily participation and click on resubmit. And the text box will open up. You just need to type in 3 significant things. And today we'll be looking at path to speaker. And one of the most powerful positions in the House, but also the United States government, is the Speaker of the House, mentioned in the Constitution, and third in line of succession after the president and vice president. And the current Speaker of the House, of course, is a well-known figure and controversial, Nancy Pelosi, the first woman to hold the position. So the question is, how do you get to that point? And it actually involves a lot of different facets of being in the legislative branch that are significant. The first one, of course, is ambition. It's one thing to want to get elected to the House, but in the back of people's minds, of course, they always hope for something higher. Maybe this will lead to me going to the Senate one day, or governor, or maybe even president. And of course, one of the powerful positions they can rise to by going into the House is to become Speaker of the House in particular. And there have been people that have gotten there quickly. It does take at least a few years. Otherwise, though, it often takes a couple decades. So you got to have the ambition to go there and to get reelected constantly and to move up the ladder to eventually be Speaker of the House. And so you also have to have the commitment of time. So you have to have a lot of patience. So ambition is an important part of this. Also, party affiliation. There are people that get elected by saying, I'm not going to be owned by my party. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to be independent-minded. Often these people are not going to be chosen to be the Speaker of the House, because obviously you have to be committed to the party, about gaining a majority, about being part of the leadership, and also standing for the principles of the party. You're not going to have a Speaker of the House that's Republican or Democrat that says, I want to be in charge because I back my party some of the time. That's not going to happen. And so you do have to have some party affiliation and commitment in order to do that. Also, fundraising. You have to be good at raising money, because one of the ways that you get votes is by donating some of the campaign funds that you've raised for yourself to other members of the House. That's basically a legal form of bribery, and you can't really make a quid pro quo promise. You can't say, I will donate $100,000 for your vote. That's illegal. But it's really what does actually happen. And so the more people you donate to, the more that are going to be loyal to you and support you if you decide to run for Speaker of the House. And there's also the leadership ladder. There's more than just the speakership. Underneath that is the majority leader and the majority whip and a conference chair and a bunch of other positions that you work your way up through. And as you gain more popularity and fundraising experience and seniority, you're going to move up through these positions one at a time, where you might be able to skip over a few. If a couple people retire at once, for instance. And so you do have to eventually move up the leadership ladder, because it also helps prove that you're able to handle a leadership job, that you're able to handle party commitment and organization and managing people. They say often trying to get the House representatives to do something is like herding cats, because everyone is so independent-minded and has their own ambition. So it does take some skill, but also some proven leadership, some experience, which is why it's important often to go up through that leadership ladder in order to get to the top. And then, of course, majority guarantee. You have to not only be ambitious enough to move up to the speakership, but you have to be ambitious enough to try to do everything you can to get your party to win the majority. Because you can want to be speaker all you want, but if you only have 217 members, you don't have the 218 that are necessary to vote you Speaker of the House. And so getting a majority is a big deal. And a lot of people don't like that about people like Nancy Pelosi. Oh, they're all about the party and they just want to take back the House. So like, yes, that's the only way you can get anything done. And so they make compromises, and you try to get legislation done to prove that your party is responsible. But at the same time, you don't want to make too many compromises, because you'll tick off people that want to take the radical position and not compromise too much. So you have to find this fine balance. And then you have to be willing to get people elected. And so you got to make tough choices, especially if you have a candidate in your party that's really crazy far out there and says something ridiculous. And so you got to decide, do we keep committed to them so we gain another seat, or do we chuck this person to the side because maybe they're endangering and making us all look crazy? And so you have a lot of tough decisions to make in order to make sure that you gain a majority. And that is really important because most of the time between 1932 and 1994, the Democrats controlled the House with only a few exceptions. And so there are a lot of people in the Republican Party all that time, decades and decades, that wanted to be Speaker, but they never earned the opportunity to do it because they didn't have the majority. With only, I think, between 46 and 48, they had a majority, and a couple other times. But other than that, though, it was far and few between. And looking at all this, of course, you have to come back to Nancy Pelosi because the Democrats lost their majority in 1994, and there was the belief that the Republicans were going to have the same thing, a period of decades where they had complete control and nothing would ever change. But of course, that did change eventually. And by 2006, the Democrats regained the majority, and Nancy Pelosi had been minority leader. And so whenever you switch to the majority, that goes from being the highest position to Speaker to being the highest position. And so she got elected Speaker that time around. They lost their majority in 2010. It went back to the Republican Party. And a lot of people thought Nancy Pelosi was finished because obviously, as the leader, you have to take some responsibility of losing the majority. But because of her fundraising skill and her ability to lead and really galvanize the Democrats to resist the Republicans and what they were doing and continue to support President Obama at the time, who was also a Democrat. Because of that, she was able to actually regain a majority in 2016 and then become the Speaker again, which is unusual. Usually, like I said, once people lose their majority, they get booted from the leadership, but she was able to hold on to that. So that just shows that she is incredibly ambitious. She does have a lot of party affiliation and commitment from the party. This isn't really talked about a lot, but she's an amazing fundraiser. She's not literally a good speaker. She's actually a terrible orator, but she is good at raising money. And that's really what has kept her in power, probably more than anything else, which is once again why some people don't like this, because they say money shouldn't be involved in politics. But it's a reality. It happens. And that's why she was able to be Speaker of the House. Now, if you've read Hardball in any places, it talks a little bit about Newt Gingrich. He's that Republican speaker that helped bring them into power in 1994. Speakers can be a focus of attention, like the President of the United States. And in Nancy Pelosi's case, obviously, that can be a little risky because in especially heavy Republican states and districts, they use her. They say, this woman's dangerous. She's the spawn of Satan. If we don't gain back the House, she will stay in control. And the same thing is true for Newt Gingrich. He loved the spotlight, and that helped his party by gaining some prominence, but it also made him look like he was to blame when they went through the impeachment of President Clinton, but they didn't remove him. It looked like it was a waste of time and money, so he got part of the blame for that. And so it can also be a downside when you have a speaker that gets a lot of attention. So that's it for path to speakership. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? Anything at all? All right.